At the beginning of this year, I decided that I was going to read 2 books a month for the entire year, so 24 books in total. And well, when I was younger, I absolutely loved to read, and I kind of lost that passion for reading when I was in school, at some point in school. And well, I'm happy to say that I now enjoy reading again. And last month alone, I read 7 books. And at some point, I started to feel changes. I felt like I was a bit more focused. I was remembering the things that I read more. It also became a lot easier to read as I kept reading more and more. And it was kind of hard to say exactly what was happening, but I felt like something was definitely happening. So with one question in mind, I decided to start to do research. And that question is, does reading actually affect our brain? So with that question in mind, I then started to read about reading, ironically, and found out that there's actually a ton of research on the subject. Since I'm making a video on the subject, like you might expect, reading does actually change the way our brain works, and in a lot of ways actually. Researchers have found that reading increases the brain's connectivity in areas that deal with things like memory, language processing, and even things like understanding emotions. They did a really interesting study that showed, well, 2 things, where they got people to read about 30 pages every night for a bit of time. I don't remember exactly how long, and then they checked their brains with an fMRI the next morning. And what that study showed is that the areas of the brain that deal with, like I said, memory, language processing, understanding emotions, all of that stuff, were lighting up like a Christmas tree. So there was actually something happening in their brain. And the most interesting part is that, well, that was done the next morning. So that means that the changes that happen in our brain are actually, they last for a longer time than just the time we're reading. And some studies have even showed that those effects might last up to 5 days. Reading has also been shown to increase memory, because unlike other media that we consume, such as watching Netflix, listening to podcasts, or whatever else, reading, you actually take a bit more time to read, which lets your brain time to process the information that you're reading, which gives your brain more time to remember those things and classify them properly. The cool thing about our brain is that almost any skill can be trained. And memory is no exception. If you start to read more, you'll see that your memory gets better with time. You'll start to remember the things that you read more, and your memory will just get better in general. Instead of jumping from one thing to the other like we used to do with technology, right? Everything's always trying to grab our attention. When we read, we move through the story in a really linear way instead of like focusing on every single detail and kind of jumping in the story back and forth all the time, which is really good for attention span, like I said. I remember hating reading when I was in school, and the books were actually good, but I never remembered the story that well. And the reason for that is that, well, we never got to enjoy the books we read. We never got to enjoy the narrative. Like, does it really matter that the curtains were blue and like the wind was blowing on them from the north or whatever? It doesn't really matter for the narrative that much. Anyways, like our memory, our attention span is another thing we can work on and improve with the right exercises. Exercises like reading. Reading has been shown to increase empathy. Turns out that losing yourself in a story and following a character to his multiple challenges will make us more empathetic. Surprisingly, our brain doesn't really do a difference in sensations between reading about something and actually doing the same thing. Our brains will actually experience the sensations that are described in the book. So basically, reading about running creates the same sensation for your brain. And well, it's the same for emotions. If you're reading about someone and he's feeling sad and all that, you'll also feel kind of sad. And well, that's how you build empathy. And well, no big surprise here, empathy is also something you can train. And I'm sure you've guessed how, by reading, of course. And I know not everybody's a natural reader, but thankfully, guess what? Reading is also something you can train by reading. Let me know down in the comments what you're reading these days. If you're looking for inspiration or whatever, I have a list in the description where I have listed some of my favorite non-fiction books. Let me know if you'd like to see more fiction books in there. Maybe I could keep a list of what I'm reading active in the description. That could be a cool idea. Lately I've been reading Deep Water by Caleb Azuma Nilsen. It's a really, really solid book. I highly recommend it. I also picked up the 5 a.m. Club and Why We Sleep, because I'm going to be doing a challenge where I wake up at 5 a.m. for a whole month. I hope you enjoyed this video. Grab a book and have a solid day. Bye.